And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Steve Neill, artist, visual effects creator, and filmmaker with over 40 years of experience in film and television industry. He has since worked on movies such as Star Trek's The Motion Picture, Ghostbusters, Fright Night, and more. He has appeared as a creature suit actor in many films, commercials, and TV shows. Besides this, Steve has had a lifetime of having ET contact, which we're going to learn about and more. Steve, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I should update that bio because it's more like 50 something, 52 years or 55 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm 72 now, and I think when I wrote that, I was in my early 60s, just a young pup.
I see the Enterprise behind you. Is that one of the props you actually made for the movie?
No, that is there was a model kit that was out that was a collector's kit, and they're very, very expensive. And this guy only made so many of them, and by the time I got to them, they weren't available anymore. And it's a 33. Oh no, it's a 66-inch long model. It's almost a 6-footer, I guess.
Wow, that's huge.
And he stopped making them, and of course, because I made models and creatures and things for movies, I said, you know what, I'm just gonna make one for myself. So I did, and I made all the parts separately the way we do, molded everything. Ended up after I made this, it was a 48-part series of me making this that was on YouTube that had a lot of views, and people kind of lived vicariously through me as I built this thing. And the big finale was when it's finished. And then I built a couple for people who are collectors and a couple for museums. In fact, one of them's in the Star Trek Sets Museums that's in New York. Yeah, so it's just something I wanted, and because I love the series, and of course I worked on Star Trek, and I knew Gene Roddenberry, and it was one of the things I loved a lot. So I still have it until they kick me out of this place, and then I'll have to sell it. But
well,
go get another sports car.
The gray behind you looks like one from one of Whitley Strieber's books.
Yeah,
is that
Whitley
true?
Whitley and I have been close friends for years, since 1990, when he called me up one night, and I thought it was one of my friends pulling a joke on me because I always wanted to on his movie, and something happened and I didn't. And so he calls me up one night and said, "This is Whitley Strieber." I was like, "Oh, come on, who is this?" I tell this story all the time, but it's just always funny if you know the guy like I do. He says, "This is Whitley Strieber." Okay. So we've been friends ever since then, and he gave me permission to that likeness, based on the painting that he had done for the book. I didn't do the painting. It's a misconception people have that I did that book cover. I did other book covers for him, but not that one. And but I did replicate it and made T-shirts, and I made a mask for a while back during the 90s of it. That was very popular. And then I made these busts, and I made quite a few of those, and he signed them, and we sold them to fans of his work. So
that's awesome. Can we start with the beginning of your contact and how this all started for you?
Sure. Of course, there's a film on my YouTube channel that's called But Something Is There, which documents a lot of these events. Most importantly, the first one that I have a real clear recollection of. I lived in San Francisco. I lived on 47th Avenue. For people who know San Francisco, they'll know that's very close to the ocean. And what used to be called Playland, which was, I could literally see it from my bedroom window. And I woke up late at night one night because this silence woke me up. I think that's what woke me up more than anything else, was this vacuum. And I felt like I really needed a test that I could breathe. It was that quiet. And in San Francisco, even late at night, it's noisy. I mean, there's lots of main streets and cars.
And how old were you?
I was 1958, so I was about 6.
Okay.
And so I'm looking around the room and I'm just thinking, this is so weird. And then these little beams of light started shining in through the window, and they started searching all around the room. And I was very curious. So I very carefully got out of bed and kind of slinked against the wall. That was the wall that had the windows that the lights were coming through. So I could stay in the shadow. So whatever was looking with those lights wouldn't see me. And then I just couldn't take it anymore. And I peeked up over the windowsill. And when I did, the lights moved as if they recognized I was there. So they knew that, oh, look, there he is. Then I got a little scared because it was just odd. And we didn't have helicopters with searchlights on them flying around San Francisco in those days. And plus, it was completely quiet. So I looked around and I saw my desk, and I thought, well, if I hide under that, I'll be safe. So I went and hid under my desk, and the lights kept looking around the room like, where did he go? And then the lights moved into the room, which was spooky. And the last thing I remember was being approached by this figure, a spindly figure with a big head. It was coming closer and closer and closer. The next thing I knew, it was morning, and I was laying on the carpet on the floor in front of my mom and dad's bed. Because I tried to sleep in there before, as it turned out, and they would always put me back in bed. So I thought if I laid on the rug, they won't see me, and I can at least be close to them. And because I was afraid of what was coming into my room at night. And that was the first.
Do you have any memories of what happened?
Well, no, I didn't. And that was kind of one of the main reasons that when I met Yvonne Smith, who's very well known for hypnotherapy work with this subject, I met her early on in the 90s, and in 93, I did a hypnotic session on it, and we didn't get much more. There was something about the closet, I recall, and there were more people in the closet. So we all know about those wicked closets, and clowns under the bed and all that kind of stuff. And all those fears were there, but we didn't get, it was like it was blocked. We couldn't get past it. It wasn't until other stuff years later started happening to me that I could remember that I would go and see her, and we'd pull out more details, things that were blocked. But whatever happened that time, she could not get past. It was blocked. It was just black.
Blocked.
I mean, I remember seeing black, which is, really odd. So
Are you thinking they wiped your memory, or it's too traumatic for you to remember?
it might have been true traumatic. I don't know. That's the thing, Jeff, is that, no matter what I talk about with this, what I recall, what happened to me, the only thing I'm truly sure of with all of this is that it did happen, that it was very real for me. I don't know what the purpose was behind it. I don't know where they're from. I don't know who they are. There's lots of theories, and I try to stick to what I know. And what I know is that this stuff has been happening to me. It continues to happen. And I've got a little better idea today what it's kind of all about, but we can get to that.
Well, let's fast forward to the next event where you have actual memories of what happened.
Well, I saw a lot of UFOs in the sky. But when I would go to Marin County to spend the weekends in the summer with my grandmother and grandfather, we were out walking one night, and this orange sphere, and this is in the film as well, it came rolling along down this dirt road over the telephone lines and just sort of stopped over us and just sat there. And it was really quiet. My grandfather, of course, that night started talking to me about all the experiences he's had when he was in Ireland. My grandmother was very skeptical, and she used to make fun of him, and then she'd make fun of me for believing him. But he was dead serious, and he saw some amazing things. So he obviously was having these experiences too. We saw a ghost one time because there was a guy that fell down a well, a farmer, in this old well, and you'd see him at night. And sure enough, I saw a shimmering human-shaped ghost with him. But then I had lots of other sightings, and you know, at my mom's house in Pacifica, we had a saucer shaped object flying over the Nike base, which we just happened to live under. Uh, I just when I was with friends, and I'd be out, we'd see them up close, and this kept going on and on and on and on. But I also had um, similar memories as to what I told you about the first time. Um, a lot of them, and I wasn't really making a connection between those experiences and this craft I'd see in the sky. That didn't happen until I read Communion, and I just went, "Oh boy, there's the two dots going together." But I had experiences going back with being. I remember laying in bed, listening to my mom playing the piano, which she did almost every night. I would go to bed, go to school, and she'd stay up, have a drink, play the piano. She was very good at it. And I remember being frozen in bed and being lifted up out of bed. There was no one there that I could see, and being pulled right through the wall, through the window, and up into this dark object in the sky with a light coming out of it.
Are you saying that they just pulled your consciousness out of your body and took you?
I couldn't tell you for sure. It felt physical enough. You know, I remember looking like this, and I could see the back of the front yard receding, and the pond down there, and the trees receding away, and we were going up. This has happened to me so many times.
Do you recall what the inside of a ship looks like?
Yeah, I mean, just you bringing it up, because sometimes they're really lit up, sometimes they're not. Overall, they're kind of subdued lighting and very metallic inside, and not a lot of straight edges. Look, things are very curvy and metallic. There's not a lot of furniture. There's no art. It's all practical, it seems. But the examination rooms, they're the same way. Sometimes there's like a console, a panel with lights on it. I've seen screens. I've seen things that are hanging down from the ceiling. But even to this day, I don't know that they're giving us what we expect, or if that's what I'm really seeing. Because whatever their method is, does have to do with their consciousness and our consciousness mingling and sharing something. But is there interiors and the places that they take me to, are they really that real, or is it something that I expect, so that's what I get? You know, I don't know. There was a time that it was during, when was that? It was the early 90s. I got up in the night. I knew something had happened. I can always tell because I feel a little ill, and I was dehydrated, and I got up. I was fully awake, and I went into the kitchen to get some water for the refrigerator, except the refrigerator was blocked, and there was a butcher block, which is a pretty heavy thing, all wood, very thick wood butcher block with these long legs on it. It's very tan, wood colored, natural wood colored. And I'm thinking, why did they leave this in front of there? Why would my wife, how could she move it, let alone put it in front of the refrigerator? I was really confused by it, but then it started to move. The legs moved, and it moved. It sort of swayed, and whatever the illusion was, my mind was giving me, it broke. And then I saw something very similar to that being looking up at me, because it was quite small. And we just had this moment. It didn't scare me. It didn't startle me. I just thought, maybe I can ask it something. And before I could even think that, practically, it just shot through the wall to the refrigerator, actually, just phew, right through. So I ran into living room to see if it was in there. And of course, it was gone. I mean, I knew better, but I tried anyway. But I was conscious, fully awake, saw it with my eyes. But what was interesting to me is that I wondered that when I saw the butcher block, was I actually seeing that being, but my mind couldn't accept it. So it went to the next best thing it could be, because it certainly couldn't be what I was seeing, and you hear this quite often. So, and I do think that's what, I don't think it was projecting that it was a butcher block, but my mind was doing something. And then, so that's why I'm very cautious about being too certain about what I'm experiencing is as solid as some people who talk about the same subject matter seem to think it is.
Do you think that they are up to nefarious or malevolent things, or we just interpret it that way because we don't understand them?
Yeah, I think we do misinterpret it. I mean, often on our channel, I see people every so often saying, that these experiences are wrong. They have no right to take us against our will. And well, how do you know that they're taking us against their will? Have you asked them? I mean, what's your evidence? So it is very subjective, depending on whose perception is of the subject matter. In all my dealings with them, I'm still alive. If I'm to believe them, several times they've saved my life, medical issues, but not always. And a lot of people say, well, if you're dying for cancer, why don't they help you with that? But what they're not thinking about is something that's been really overlooked, I think. And that is that a lot of the people who are having these experiences were placed in human form. That sounds so sci-fi, but I mean, we've become human with our memories wiped, or at least recessed back, so that we could fully understand what it is to be human, to feel love, to have these feelings, to experience death, to experience pain of dying from something, like cancer or other things. At this age, and with all the time I've spent with this subject matter, I think that this could be part of it, very much so. Because whenever I have people go in front of camera to talk about their experiences, even the ones that send in the letters anonymously, they always usually start off saying the same thing, and that is they don't feel that they really came from here or they belonged here, that at a very early age, they'd go out and look at the stars and they'd long to go home. And it gives me the chills, because every time I get someone new, with the exception of today, the gentleman I had here today, he did not bring that up, but almost everyone else has. So I started thinking, maybe there's really something to this. Now, there's one tall, very thin, very feminine, gray type being that has a larger head and bigger eyes than the smaller type that has been prevalent throughout my experience. And she seems to care a great deal about my well-being, and is always there. And, I have an implant in my ear like Whitley has, and it's in the same ear. And it's starting to bother me right now as I talk about it, because that's what it always does. What I recently was told, I don't know if I can believe it or not for sure, but this is what I was told, is that it was actually a part of her, that piece of her tissue, so that we have this connection. And of course, it's been coming out more and more and more, is that we're both physical and spiritual beings, and so are they. And they feel that we have really separated from that. We live strictly in the physical. We don't accept that when our brain stops working, we go on. A lot of that has to do with science telling you that you're worm food, and when all the electrical activity in your brain stops, you're done. But I know from having experiences with near death in very interesting ways, and the people I know that have, and the people I've interviewed that have, there's a lot more to it than that. There's no, in my mind, for me, because of the experience I had, there's no question we go on. And when your brain has ceased to function, you shouldn't be conscious anymore, but you are. And I think this is what they're trying to get us to understand or get us to connect to. And somehow by having people have these experiences that are really originally from their realm, they feel that this is a good liaison between humans who are living in a physical world full of fear and hate and rage to realize that they're spiritual beings, and that when their body dies, they go on. I think that the visitors themselves continually live in both realms. We call it the realm of the dead, but I don't. No one's really dead there. It's just there's two realms, and they exist in both simultaneously. And I think that's something that we should be doing as well, and many of us can do and do.
They're multidimensional.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love science, and I stick with it all the time. I have since I was a kid. They can be a little blockheaded sometimes. They want to get out of their box. But when things like James Webb happen and some of the other things that have happened recently, they're realizing that there's a lot more to this existence we have than meets the eye in that box.
Do you think it's possible that you are an ET having a human experience, and
It's possible.
this female being is your partner on the other side waiting for you?
I don't know, but it's an interesting relationship because I actually have feelings for her, and it's hard to talk. Some of the stuff is hard to talk about because it's odd enough to begin with. But it gets, it gets out there sometimes.
Do you have any type of communication with her, whether it's telepathic or in dreams?
I do, I think, but the thing is, I always want to ask questions, and I'm rarely allowed to do that. But basically, I'm always confronted by, you have the answers to those questions already. It's in my heart. You know it instinctively. And human beings overall don't seem to trust that gut feeling, and it always leads them wrong when they don't. The directions say turn right. Your gut says, no, it's not right. But you go against it. No. The instructions, they know what they're talking about, and you get lost. It happens every time. It always happened to me. But you just have to start trusting that sense that you have that. Yeah, so that's why when we were talking earlier, I said that the near-death experiences and this experience with the visitors are one and the same. They're connected deeply, and they're really the same thing.
Quite a few of my guests claim that they made a pre-birth contract with ETs, and that's why they have contact now.
Yeah, well, and a lot of them, yeah, you'll hear it. I've heard it. You agreed to do this. I did? I don't remember. Well, that's the whole point. They don't want you to remember your past life or your past existence as a being like that, because it would be ineffective in being able to experience what humans experience from the time they're born to the time they die. It wouldn't be an honest, it wouldn't be good science. As crazy as that sounds. But I really think we need to think outside the box. Everyone I talked to for years, was like, well, where are they from? And how do their spaceships function? And, it's that whole thing about little green men from other worlds. I'm not saying that's not what it is. In a lot of cases, I'm sure it is. But I think that when you're dealing with something like those beings that have obviously been around a lot longer than human form has been, at least in the state that they are on Earth, they would have evolved into not just a technological level that was pure magic compared to what we know, but also spiritually, they would have also evolved a great deal, and we haven't, which would make them much more connected. But I also feel that somewhere in there they lost something, and that part of what's going on with the people who have these experiences is that they're trying to reconnect with that, and that's love and the emotions. I think somehow it's a gut feeling I have that somewhere along the line they lost touch with it.
Have any of your experiences been traumatic? And if so, were they so much that it's giving you PTSD?
Yeah, actually, I do. I was talking about that today when I was staying with my grandmother and step grandfather up in Bernie, my maternal grandmother in Bernie,
And
California.
oh, I was going to say Bernie's right down the street from me in Texas. I was like, here in
No,
Texas?
Bernie, California. It's up near the Oregon border. It's several thousand feet up in the mountains, a little logging town, and that's where I would go and spend. I spent a whole year there once, and one night they were both alcoholics, but they were functioning alcoholics. My grandmother was a brilliant genius, and but they drank all the time, and they never seemed to be drunk. It was that kind of thing, and but one night they went to the store to get more liquor. I remember that, and everything was fine. We drove there, and it was closed. So fine, we'll go over to the next town. There's another place we can go, and so we're driving down this winding road all by ourselves. Big trees, tall trees to the right and left of us, and all of a sudden there were all these bright lights. They were kind of off to one side, but they're also on the road, and there were these guys standing there, and they had like tin construction hats on, and they got us to stop. And then what I could gather, they talked to my step grandfather, said that we have to sit here for now. We're doing some construction or something like that. And then I'm watching my grandmother and my grandfather, and they both started to kind of lean over. And one of them had its hand through on my grandmother, and the other one had its hand through on my grandfather. And next thing I knew, they're lifting him out of the car. And I remember looking out the window, and I'm sitting in the back, and one of them was coming for me. And they took me out, and I was walking, and they were just sort of out, and they were being dragged, much like Barney and Betty Hill, just kind of being. They weren't floating in the air, but they were weightless, it seemed, to the men or the beings carrying them. They looked like humans to me. And we got to this structure that was in the forest, and I'm assuming now it was some sort of craft, and it was really brightly lit up, and they took us inside. And I don't know what happened to my grandmother and grandfather, but they took me in and basically said, you know what the drill is, and we're going to check you over and make sure everything's okay with you, and then we're going to put you back, and you're going to go on your way. It was that routine, and they did do that. And I remember coming to in the back seat of the car, and they were driving, and they were still going to that town, but it was weird. It's like when I woke up, I could remember what happened, but I thought it was some kind of weird dream or what happened. I was really confused. And they were too. I could tell. Like, what happened? We just saw those people, and now we're just driving on the road. So we get to the other town, and of course, the whole town was closed up because it was hours later, and it gotten late, and everybody closed down. So obviously, we had missing time. And so to this day, to answer your question after that long story, I'll be driving late at night on the freeway, and if Caltrans is off to the side, they have all the bright lights on. The guys are around the hard hats and stuff. I get sort of panicky feeling, I do. It really, I don't like being on a road by myself at night. There's something comes over and it's got a bright light on it. It could be a helicopter. In fact, helicopters. When I met my late wife and I moved in with her in Silver Lake, they used to fly around the neighborhood a lot because we had a lot of trouble around that time. And when they would be chasing somebody And we had someone in our backyard. They're shining down all the lights and they're shining in the window and everything. You know, I was unnerved by that because this was like 1981 and Commune hadn't come out yet, and I had not connected the dots at that point. And she would say, "Why are you so panicked? It's just helicopters." And I go, "I don't know. This is really freaking me out." And so yeah, I don't have it as much now, but when I see the lights on the road, or if they come through my window, you know, or a helicopter shines a light on me, it makes me feel very uncomfortable. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to shake that.
When did you get the ear implant?
The ear implant, you know, I'm really, you've heard Whitley describe how he got his. What's really weird about that is that mine was very similar. I had two people come to the house. My late wife used to do the Renaissance Fair, and she had a booth out there, and she maintained and she sold and made trifle. So she would leave on a Friday night and go out there and spend the whole weekend out there, and I'd be left alone. So one morning I woke up and I was in my bathrobe and looked out the window, and I saw this car pulled up, and I see two people getting out, and this woman had a baby in her arms and she's wearing a blue dress, and this other guy looked like David Jacobs, who's really something. And again, there's that thing going on with your mind. And they came to the house and knocked on the door, and I'm thinking, who are these people? So I opened the door and I'm looking at the girl, and the girl looks like very similar to my late wife's best friend. And she's holding this baby. And then the other person looked like David Jacobs. And I said, "Who are you people? What are you doing here?" And the guy that looked like David Jacobs said, "Oh, come on, Steve. You know who I am. You've read all my books." And I started feeling kind of odd at that point. And I could sense it even now. I started feeling kind of drugged. And they pushed the door open, and I stepped back, and they took charge of me. And they just turned me around. They put their hands on me. They took me back to the bedroom. They put me face down on the bed, and they pulled up my robe. And I felt one of them put their hands on my back. And I think that's when something went in my ear. I woke up face down in the bed with the robe still up and my back cold. This was the morning, you know, and it was very uncomfortable. And I had all that memory. This wasn't anything I had to get back from by going into hypnosis. So, but of course, I was left to wonder when I woke up face down on the bed with my knees on the floor and the other part of me over the bed edge, because it was a very low bed. It was like it was a water bed. Was I dreaming? But my ear hurt, and I had marks on my back, and the robe was pulled up. So what did I do? Reach behind me and pull it up like this? You know, it was so I knew something had happened, and it was very doubtful it was a dream to me. But other people would probably tell me, "Well, you just had a real powerful dream," and you know.
Well, it sounds like they took, you know, some of your memories and it appeared to you as people that you either you knew.
That's what I'm thinking, because
or
it
knew
hadn't
of.
happened. It happened other times during the Renaissance Fair. I had two guys knock on the door. They were both wearing hard hats. One was slightly overweight, African American. The other one was Caucasian. And they're standing at the door, you know, and knocking on it. And I thought, well, maybe there was a problem with the power or something on the street. I mean, I didn't know. They looked official enough, and I opened the door up and saw what I described to you. And again, I said, "What's going on?" And it's good. The black gentleman said, "Oh, come on, Steve, you know what's going on." And he pulls this little like credit card size thing out of his pocket. And it's this, mind you, this is 80, late 80s again. And it's got this little screen and on it, and I could see images moving on the screen, like a little liquid crystal flat screen that we didn't quite have on that good then. And he said, "You know what this is all about?" And they stepped back, and I looked out the door, and I saw this silver, like a uh, what they call them, a Airstream trailer, silver, but it was cigar shaped vehicle, and it was just parked on the street with these little kind of portholes in the side of it. I would see these again and again later, and I know other people have described them. And they told me, "Hey, it's time to go. This is broad daylight." And they took me to that thing, and I remember bits and pieces of it. I remember being inside of it. There were other people and dressed in all different ways, and they were out. I was awake. This would happen often, and I remember this really tall, strange-looking guy in like a suit coming down the aisle, and I'm looking out these windows, and I'm thinking, this looks like an airliner, but there's no sound at all, and you can see the earth, the hills, and the trees, and the houses receding, and I just looked at him and I said, this is perfect. These people never, if they wake up, they're just going to think they're flying somewhere in an airliner, because it felt like that inside. And he said something like that. That's right. It's very observant of you. And I couldn't understand why I wasn't out. But as I'd find out later on, when other things happened, especially in 1994 at the Coronado, Del Coronado, there was a mass abduction that happened there. In fact, Bond wrote a book about it. I was involved in that. They would tell me that I was special, that I was different. I wasn't like the other people, that I didn't have to go through these things. And I didn't know what was meant by that for the longest time. But in light of what we just spoke about earlier, it would make sense that if some of us are what I called plants, we've been planted here, our memories were erased, we're just souls living a human life, then that would make sense that they felt that we were different, because we weren't like the other people, that they were, I hate using the word abducting, we're taking. So, and this kind of stuff just kept on happening.
In late 97, I was at a place where Whitley Strieber was speaking and saw him speak, and I decided to buy his book, and I waited in line to have him autograph it. And I just basically told him, "Hey, I'm a chiropractor, and can I palpate that implant in your ear?" And surprisingly, he said yes. So I can tell you, I felt it. It feels like a rock in his ear. And from what I know, he wanted to have it cut out, but at the time that they were going to do it, it started moving.
Yes, it did.
Have you tried to cut yours out?
No. I have immediately a no comes up. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. So I'm going to do that.
Do you think
the thing is, it would be proof, perhaps, right? But I was with Roger Lear, because we were very close, and I was with Roger Lear, and Whitley was always there too during the implant removals, and I got a really bad vibe when that stuff was going on, and Roger wanted to remove it. Roger wanted to remove one from my arm, and I just didn't want. I just thought, no, I'm not supposed to do this. I'm not going to do it. I think the reason that Roger and everyone was interested in doing this, getting these objects removed, is because it would be proof. And they did, and it was proof. But unfortunately, it was denied by the scientific community. They didn't care. I mean, that's the problem. If you can give them actual evidence, and they'll say, no, I don't believe that. And they'll come up with a million excuses why it's not what the analysis has shown. I mean, one of the most shocking things to me was the fact that some of these implants that Roger removed had human tissue merged with it, nerve cells growing out of them. And this is, I think, done to keep them from being rejected by the body. But I mean, how do you do that? Do we have that capability? I don't think we do. And I got to see Jesse Long's implant that he had removed from his knee, and that was a crystal. And they did work with that. And again, substances they found on this were not common or even possible on Earth. And so that's denied. And I know that no matter what I come up with, especially if I come up with something really hard evidence, like a piece of technology, like craft, something like that, that won't last in my possession very long at all before somebody will come and take it. I won't be home when it happens, or they will be home when it happens. It doesn't matter. They took all of Roger's stuff after he passed. I couldn't get my x-ray of my arm that showed it was severed. And yet I've never had a broken arm or a broken bone in my body my whole life. So having proof, people are always saying, well, when you're seeing these UFOs, why don't you get pictures of them? I never think to do it. The night I was on the phone with Whitley and I saw the large triangle silently fly over the backyard here in Port Hueneme, California, people were exasperated that I didn't, stop talking to Whitley and get the camera on it. And so I'm a special visual effects artist for Hollywood. I've produced and written films about this subject and done all this visual effects and things for them. And so you're going to accept that I'm not faking this stuff. And no matter what happens, you're going to say, I did it, I faked it. So I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. And I just gave up on really caring about proving it to anyone. It's enough for me and to the community that I know and love that this is happening to us.
How have these experiences affected your work in creating these ET beings and spaceships and things like that?
I get asked that a lot. It's obvious that, to me anyway, that I have been interested in sci-fi films and horror films and the paranormal and Twilight Zone and Outer Limits and Star Trek, and 2001: A Space Odyssey is one of my hugest influences of all. Reading sci-fi and hanging out with telescopes and astronomy when I was a kid as much as I did. Any skeptic would say, see, that's why you're seeing aliens. It's easy for them to say. It's easy for them to say because they have never experienced it. And they'll tell you, well, I'm an astrophysicist. I spend all my time looking at the sky. Yeah, through a lens piece or on a CT screen that's connected to a telescope, feeding back data focused on a specific object. But when's the last time you just went up to the mountains without a telescope, maybe a pair of binoculars, and just sat and watched the sky all night? You'll see things that you can't explain, at least.
How do you explain to the public that this stuff is real? It's not people just making up stories.
Well, one of the best ways for me is the letters we get. I mean, we get a lot of letters from people who don't want their families to know. They don't want their boss to know. They don't want anybody to know. But they can't talk to anybody about it. And that's really hard on someone, I mean, it builds up inside of them, and they know something's happening to them that they can't explain, and they know it's real, but they know because of the stigma that's been put on this subject matter by scientists, by the press, our culture in general, that they can't. And so when they write letters to you about this stuff and they won't go on your show and they won't give you their real names and stuff, I don't see what the point is. People always say, oh, they're making this stuff up so they can get a movie or get a book out and make money. The people making these comments, what they don't realize is that you don't make a lot of money off of a book. You just don't. Some people have. Whitley did very well off Comedian. That was different. But again, these people have nothing to gain by sharing these stories the way they've been sharing them. Because there's no way they can profit from them. There's no way they can get attention from them. They got your attention, but what happened for them is that they were able to finally tell their story, even though it's not related back to their identity. It was a big lifting of weight off their chest that they've been carrying for a long time. And the other way I would tell people to get a sense that there's something to this stuff is to spend time looking at the sky. If you ask most people on the street, when's the last time you sat and looked at the stars at night? They'll look at you like you're odd, or they'll look at you and say, I really, I don't know. I need to do that. Yeah, they do. Because, we're born from the stars. We owe our very existence. And I mean, the ETs or whatever you want to call them as well. We're born of the stars, this vast, huge universe. And it's just one of many universes. And most of human thought, I believe, isn't spent thinking about it very much at all, if ever. And I think that's a gateway. It's a start.
What do you think about people who participate in CE5 events and are deliberately trying to make contact? Good idea or bad?
I think it's perfectly fine. I don't think there's any harm in it. And it's something that later this year we're going to take a group of experiencers that I know, and just a small group, and we're going to go to an isolated area that's high up in the mountains and the stars, and meditate and see what we can, if it attracts anything. Because I know that when I've been on camping trips with people who are not associated with this subject matter, that we'll be sitting around the campfire, literally, and they'll start saying, "What's that?" And I'll look up and here's something moving along, and it stops. And then it starts going the other way and stops. And some stuff that's really dramatic when it suddenly gets bright and zips off, and disappears. And you just see the light bulb go on. And suddenly you're not as, we love you, but you're kind of weird. That kind of, we love you, but geez, there might be something to this. I really think that people should spend more time and should get their kids more interested in the thing this planet is surrounded by. This vast, vast galaxy, and beyond the galaxy, more galaxies in this universe. There's more of it than anything else. And we're a huge part of it. We're connected to it. And most people don't even know that. I remember one time, and this was only a few years ago, we were in a group with a bunch of artists, and they would break us up, put us in tables with people we didn't know. And we would talk about things that that people didn't usually talk about. And I brought up this very thing. I didn't talk about being abducted or any of that kind of stuff, but I talked about the stars and how we need to connect with them. And there was this 60-something-year-old lady sitting across from me. I said, for most part, people don't even realize that their sun is a star, like the other stars they see at night. And she looked at me and said, "Wait a minute. You're telling me that our sun is a star?" I said, "Yeah." And she got all excited. She got happy. She says, "Oh my God, I never realized that all these years." She says, "So that would mean that the other stars out there are suns, and they might have life on them too." I said, "Yeah, exactly." Oh my. I just opened up her whole world.
It's amazing to see those photos from the James Webb Telescope when they just peek into space that looks empty, and then they zoom in, and then you start to discover entire galaxies out there.
Yeah. And lots of things that defy the physics that we know today. I mean, back in the 80s, quantum physics was kind of giggled at as being fringe science. Now it's accepted, but now we're finding things that are beyond that as well. It's so much so that in some cases, I think some of the scientists are thinking that it's sending back faulty data, because that just can't be. It goes against everything we know. It's okay not to know. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to make mistakes in science, and you were wrong about when the Big Bang happened, or if it happened at all, or the age of the universe. It's okay.
Well, I was checking out your website, and it's I guess it's the website about your artwork and your
Yeah,
crafts and stuff. And
that's
it
my
looks
portfolio kind of. Yeah.
yeah, it looks pretty neat. Like you have quite a few things there that people can check out.
Yeah. I have a lot of hobbies. The main ones that I love the most is classic sports cars, classic cars, uh, racing slot cars, um, flying.
But
I like,
you paint
yeah, sure. I
space.
paint,
I think
sculpt. Yeah.
you create ETs or you sculpt them.
Yeah. Well, now I'm working digitally. I'm going to be releasing um, a bust soon of a gray being that I did entirely digitally. In other words, using Blender, um, you actually can sculpt hands-on type sculpting with digital clay, and I can do all the same things. Like I got good at it, and it's difficult to tell a digitally sculpted piece from one that was done practically with clay. It's a lot less strenuous on me because when I would sculpt these big masks and things, you work with big, heavy weighted clay. You have to make molds. You have to cast rubber and all that stuff. And now I'm 72. It's getting a little harder to do. I mean, I'm in good health, but being able to do it digitally on the screen and then print it out, that size or that size or that size, and then finish it off and paint it is still quite rewarding, and it's a lot less strenuous work, and I don't have molds and all that kind of stuff. So I am going to be releasing a bust, and I'm not going to charge much money for it because I want people to be able to have them.
Would you mind showing us some of those ETs behind you that you've created?
Well, there's just this one that's close by. And it's let me unblock this. It says okay over that. Yeah, I can see. So that's of course the visitor lady from Whitley's book cover. So, and this is actually made out of rubber, very thick rubber. It should last for years and years and years. But this was sculpted all in clay and then molded in a hard stone material, the two pieces, and then we take all the clay out and then fill it up with latex, let it sit for hours, and it builds up a real thick. Then we fill it with polyfoam. So
it looks awesome.
It's not life size. I did a lot of life size stuff way back when. There's some of those over on the wall over there, masks that I've done. Some of them are replicas from Star Trek, and some of them are. So there's another Travis Walton Gray back there.
I didn't mention it in the beginning, but you are a fellow podcaster that creates videos similar to mine, but mostly about ET contact. If people want to check out your YouTube channel, what is it called?
It's called Breaking the Silence. And you're going to find that there are other channels called that. So you're going to, the best probably way to do it is, since we don't have a link up here, is just to search with my name, Steve Neill, Breaking the Silence, or Breaking the Silence, Close Encounters, UFOs, and you should get it.
Well, I'll put a link in the description so they can find you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have anything else that you're working on that you want people to know about?
Well, I'm constantly working. It's because we do a podcast. It's actually a live stream with a guest, and we've had everybody from Whitley Strieber to Terry Lovelace on the show, and we talk about our experiences, and we have a group of people in chat that all have experiences, and we talk about it. The other thing, the main thing we do though, Breaking the Silence, is actually a series. So some of the films are over 20 minutes to 30 minutes to 40 minutes, but I've been cutting back on the time because the longer ones don't seem to get as many views. But we put someone who's had these experiences in front of the camera, and we let them talk. We let them tell their story. We don't interview them. We make it very cinematic with the lighting, and we let them look right into the camera and talk directly to you about what they experienced. And then as they're describing what happened, using CGI effects that I've been doing for years. I used to do them, in fact, for the History Channel's UFO Files, and other shows. I do recreations, visualizations of what they experienced and what they saw, and integrate that with them talking, and lay in dramatic score behind it. They've been very successful and very well received. So if you're someone who has these experiences and you are brave enough to come on camera and let people see your face, tell your story, we're looking for you, because this is the way you can tell your story. You will not have any judgment passed on you at all. Everybody behind the camera is someone who's had experiences with this, and we don't allow skepticism or debunking on our show at all. So you're safe.
Well, after watching this podcast, people may have questions to you. Are you open to that?
Well, sure. Yeah, I try to answer everybody's questions,
What's the best way to reach you?
What's that?
What's
Best way to reach me?
Yeah.
We have a Breaking the Silence email. So
And what is it?
That I believe it's on the channel. I have so many email addresses. I can't. It's Breaking the Silence. It's like breakingthesilence.show.me at gmail.com. I'm not. I know Mary's put it on the site, so because we get emails there all the time, and that's how they're reaching us, is through the channel. So, but I can get it to you. It's not that hard. So,
Steve, before we wrap it up, can you leave us with one last positive message about ETs?
yes, one of the messages that I get, and I certainly got that night. I was on the phone with Whitley Strieber. I was looking for an ending for my film. I didn't like the ending we had, and I'm standing there in the backyard with the phone up to my ear, and I'm talking to Whitley, and I look over, and there's this shape that, I don't know, it's like like almost a mirage in the sky that was moving and coming closer to me. And I thought, well, maybe it's an owl or something flying in the city lights. The lights from the town are casting up underneath. And then it wasn't that anymore. It was a triangle, and had these 2, 3 faint little lights at each point, and it was coming closer and closer and closer. And I'm describing this to Whitley, and I'm just exasperated. It's like, here he is on the phone. I wish he was here to see this. And it flew slowly over, and it's accelerated. It was dead silent. And after I got off the phone with Whitley, I was going into the house, and just as I got to the sliding door, I heard, "There's still hope. Don't give up." And I've heard this again and again and again. So to answer your question from earlier on, I do think, at least what I'm dealing with, cares a great deal.
Steve, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
You're welcome, Jeff. It was great. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.